I work principally as a conceptual artist. Most of my clients are in the defense industry. I occasionally work directly for the military, but most of the time I work for civilian corporations that are defense contractors. They build weapon systems and things for the military. I work for all the major defense contractors. I work for General Dynamics, Lockheed, Northrop, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, Rockwell International, Honeywell, Allied Signal Corporation. And it was a very enjoyable, very lucrative business. And just before I went into college, in '67, when I was at Westover Air Force Base, had this Gilbert Science Company 80 power reflector telescope and everything. And one night before I was going to go to bed, took the dog out, to go to the bathroom and stuff. It was in March or February of '67. And I saw this light moving across the sky, and then it just kind of stopped, and there wasn't any noise. So I took the dog back in the house, I brought out my telescope, and I watched this thing through the telescope for about 10 minutes. And then, in fact, it was hovering directly over the facility where they kept the nuclear weapons, the storage facility near the alert hangars at Westover Air Force Base. And it started to move off, and it moved off slowly and kind of wandered around the sky, and then all of a sudden just poof, it was gone, like it had been fired out of a gun. It was just out of sight in just a second or two. It all started coming together when I was working at Intravision, and John Ippolito talked about this interview that he'd done with a person who had, for some reason, had wound up walking up to or near a hangar at a section of a military, an Air Force base, and had seen a flying saucer in the hangar, and then he was arrested and hauled off and blindfolded and debriefed and all this sort of thing. This fellow, Mark Stambaugh, apparently, according to Roger Turner, had developed an experiment that created a kind of levitation. In some circles it's been called electrogravitic levitation or anti-gravity. And what he did was he apparently acquired a high voltage power source, DC, direct current power source, and he took a couple of 1/4-inch thick copper plates about 1 foot in diameter with a lead coming out of the middle of each one at the top and the bottom, and he basically embedded them in a type of plastic resin like polycarbonate or plexiglass or some other kind of clear resin, where you could see the plates and you could see the material. Apparently did everything he could to get all the little air bubbles and stuff out of there so there wouldn't be any pathways for the electricity to break down the material and arc through there. And the experiment was to see how much voltage you could put on this capacitor, this is a plate capacitor in this arrangement. How much voltage can you put on this thing before the insulating material begins to just break down? Well, according to Roger, he got up to about 1,000,000 volts and the thing would begin to float. But it floated in accordance with principles that have been described in a patent that was filed back in the late 50s, early 60s by a gentleman called Thomas Townsend Brown. He and another individual by the name of a Dr. Beefield, he had been a student of this Dr. Beefield. And this effect became known as the Beefield-Brown effect. Well, he apparently duplicated the experiments done by Beefield and Brown, but the one aspect that they found about this arrangement was that the levitation would always occur, or movement would occur, in the direction of the positively charged plate. So if you had two plates, one's negative, one's positive because it's a direct current system. And if you have the positive plate on top, it would move in that direction. If you had it on a pendulum, it would always swing in the direction of whatever direction the positive plate was facing. Beefield Brown had even done some experiments in the 50s where he had put a couple of these type of capacitors on like a little pivoting point. And these things would spin as you charge them. I got a call from a kid that I had known at Art Center.
He specifically said this was a waste of taxpayers' money to have covert operations that have developed advanced technologies in this energy or propulsion area, and then NASA is also getting tax dollars to do the same thing all over again. The parallel development, he felt, was a waste of taxpayers' money. I've seen other senators say the same thing. In fact, that particular senator requested information from the president about such covert operations.